I met my ex-husband in Tibet in 1993. My maiden name is Kerry Blaser. I was born in Scottsdale, Arizona. We quickly moved to Europe for about 3, 4 years and lived in southern France, Toulouse and Geneva. My dad was an engineer at the time. And then we moved to Westlake, like we've talked about, and my parents quickly got a divorce. Well, my mom was an alcoholic and my dad was a workaholic, and they came from traumatic childhoods. Like my mom was engaged 4 times and then got married to my dad, and my dad's 4 years younger. And my dad's family, his parents got divorced in the 50s and then got remarried 8 years later when his mom got pregnant with another man's child. So, I come from some trauma. And so that was passed down to me, and then I went on and what I remember is you could see the pictures on my website is that from the time I was young, like my only memory from kindergarten, like true, like serious memory that I had like forever, because more memories are coming back now, but I'm just sorting through them, is playing by myself with a little block tool on some wire in the room with no other kids. And that's been my life. Like, always had a hard time making friends, didn't know what to say, didn't know how to connect because I had rejected myself so fully by internalizing the kind of self-hate around me. And I'm super sensitive and perceptive. So it's like, oh, I'm the problem. I'm making you mad. Oh, I'm the what, I'm in trouble. I guess I'm the problem. And that's basically, I would say, the trauma that I internalized so that I just kind of kept myself from other people. It was like masochistic about it, like just hated on myself. And like I entered high school with no friends. I had one friend in middle school, and so it was quite challenging. And then I went to college and lots of anxiety and like a sweating all the time and like running from things all the time and not knowing how to be different. Like I had no idea what was wrong or to be different. And I barely remember my childhood. And then, I married someone who, he love bombed me 10 days in. I want to marry you. It's like, um, you know, we weren't very mature, but that's what, needed to happen. And so I would say that's, kind of how I got to where my book is at 45. In my early 40s. I had 4 to 7 migraines per week. I had a hard time going in the sun for like 2 years, which is like too much for me. And then at 45, my mom passed away on my birthday, like the exact day. And that was the day my soul told me it's time to heal from your childhood trauma and it's time to accept your psychic gifts. And that's my book, My Inner Heroine, Exploring Feminine Pain.
Thank you for sharing that because our childhood experiences can have such a lasting impact on our adulthood. And you shared that you experienced trauma and pain and so many other things in between at a very young age. When you look back at what you went through,
Yeah.
how difficult was it to grow through that type of early childhood experiences?
I mean, memories are coming back now, but like then I just arguing with my dad all the time. I remember when I was 15 and a half, I started creating arguments when he picked me up from my mom's house. It was a tiny town like a mile away. And he would just turn around before he got to his dad's house and take me home. But I just didn't want to go there. One time my brother's hitting me. I'm like, Dad, I need help. Well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, be the dad, protect me. So my came from a lot of insecurity. My dad had me sleep in his bed with him until I was 11, and then he would sleep at his my now stepmom's house. So he'd leave my brother and I home alone. My mom needed the break every other weekend because she's working, taking care of 2 kids with no help, no family. So like looking back now, I get it, but it's what I've learned is that, women need the ability to stay home with the kids for her well-being and their well-being. There's like 60% of people right now that do not have a secure attachment to self, which means mentally ill, and whether they're avoidant or anxious or somewhere in between. I had a super anxious attachment style because I'm the problem. Like, oh my God, I'm the problem. What do I do? If I'm the problem, how do I get people to be nice to me? How do I cover up that I'm the problem and go, oh, but maybe, what I mean? Like it's a whole conundrum that you can't get out of it until I accepted that I had trauma at 45 And then I had psychic gifts and I started learning to surf the waves of life. I started learning how to go into my pain and come out of my pain. And I went to a couple shamans that really helped me. And I remember, and then and then 6 years ago, it got really bad and I attempted suicide. But I needed that. I needed to let go that much because I took all the medications I was taking, like Trazodone, Klonopin, Soma, Ambien. And then I went upstairs and I just went right to sleep, which I never did, which why I had so many medications. But that's how done I was. I was just done with life. I'm like, this is just so effed up. Like, how can why like what like just oh and so I let go, but I needed that. I came back Carrie 2.0. My shamanic gifts came out. I did several medicine journeys. I had a huge win at work, and then I started attracting in men.
That's
And
the big one, right? Like when you start attracting the opposite sex, you're like, oh my God, how is this going to show up here?
well, you know, 5 years ago, I thought I was ready, but I haven't been on a date in 7 years. Okay. So, we all think a lot of stuff, and then we find out what reality really is. So, so yeah, but all of that, like learning to kind of, surf the waves of life. And so what happened was 6 months after I attempted suicide, I decided to try out yoga. People told me, oh, hot yoga. I'm like, what? And I went like, like this. So they told me which class to start in. They told me where to sit. Our souls worked it out. I was sitting here. He was sitting right behind me. I start talking to the woman next to me who knows my oldest daughter. I have three kids. And I just start getting really happy and I start lighting up. And I'm like, in a way, I wasn't used to because when I came home from the hospital after my suicide attempt, I found out that my stepfather had idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. He's dying. And I didn't tell him, and I just took care of him. My mom had already passed. And then my son has mild autism, and my youngest daughter had an eating disorder, was living with me too. So now I have four people with needs, but all the my capacity for life came out of me in that situation. And so, I met this guy, I lit up, and I turn around, he starts talking to me, I'm like, oh, I shut down. And for a year, he kind of tried to talk to me and I wouldn't let him. I did my medicine journeys. I realized, oh my gosh, I don't love myself and neither do my children. Problem. So and then we had our first conversation in December 30th, 2020. And when I was 15 and a half, around the same time that I got in that argument with my dad about going to his house, debilitating lower back pain started. And I had like, and that's common with women. When we have wounds in our womb, like rape, abortion, abuse, other things, then it comes out of our hips as like, that's where our tension, our anxiety is stored. Like men store a lot of that in their arms because that's where their value is, provide and protect. Our value, is our womb to create our voice and then, children. And so my lower back pain went away instantly because I just embraced my femininity and I believed in myself. And it was like, and after class, I'm like, I talked to him, like, oh my, it's gone. Like, where's, like, oh my God. Oh, because I wasn't even able to finish yoga classes before that. And I finished the class without pain. I'm like, so I embrace myself and I'm in less pain. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And
It
that,
was love at first yoga stretch.
there you go. Yeah. Yeah. And
Interesting.
so,
Like
yeah.
when you think back about that, and you're struggling with reciprocating the attention that he was giving you, what role do you think maybe your self worth or your value at that time played in the hesitation?
I'm sorry, can you repeat one more time? I didn't pick
Yeah,
up what
what
you
role
said.
do you think your value or your self worth played in your hesitation at that time
Which hesitation? The first
with
conversation?
him? With
Oh,
him.
oh yeah, I just got scared and shut down the first time. Now I'm gonna, I'll share one more thing about my childhood. These are recent memories that came back that I was raped repeatedly and had forced abortions. Okay. So by a man who's over 6 feet tall, ASB president. Dad was a surgeon, small town. My dad didn't sleep at home at night, and I lived and my dad's house was a quarter mile from his house, right? So, and then I had to be at high school with him for 2 years. He's 2 years older. And so, I was healing from those wounds, but I didn't remember them. I didn't understand that valuing my femininity, valuing my wound, valuing my voice, which had been suppressed because I didn't know how to connect. And so I realized that that's how long it took for me to heal. There's a nerve between the woman's wombs. I think it's the vagus nerve, the womb and the throat for the communication because communication is feminine. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I didn't know how to have a voice loud enough that men would listen and I could stop abuse. Right. So I didn't understand that I was attracting men like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate's in my book. He's in my lineup. Okay. So I got men in a lineup with Andrew Tate. So no, I haven't been on a date. Okay. I'm addressing some societal issues here that I think a lot of women want addressed. And, I'm going to keep going. I got money to do it and I'm going to keep going because enough with all of this. So, yeah, it was very hard to like find my voice and bring it out of me. But like the medicine journeys, because psilocybin, it recalibrates our nervous system to resonate with love, compassion, and enlightenment instead of fear, guilt, and shame. And that rewiring, the recalibrating, that's healing through trauma. That's the reparenting. It takes like I'm 10 years in and I'm not done yet. Like I just called the police on him a couple months ago to finally report what happened 40 years ago. So it took me 40 years to bring it out of me because it was that painful, and I think that we don't understand that in a general sense in society that when we abuse women, women are the emotional center. So if women are the center and men are once removed, if the woman's out, the men are way out. So I can blame men for the patriarchy all day long, but if I don't address the wounds with the women, then the patriarchy is going to stay. So, and I had to figure that out. Like, why is all this happening to me? Why is this happening to women? Why is there a patriarchy? Like, what is really going on here? And it's the suppression of the feminine and the elevation of the masculine. So both are out of balance. And then you get abuse.
You hear a lot about femininity and masculinity in the well, you hear about in both, right? I know there's a lot of comments that are maybe about misandry and misogynistic, but let's put that to the side. For those who are looking to establish healthy masculine and feminine energy within themselves and
Mhm.
increase their self-worth, what are some of the steps that you'd recommend for them to do?
So I have my 6 divine feminine self-love strategies, and I can give you a copy to put in the link of your notes. Okay, it'd be great. And so the first one is appreciate, learn, forgive equals ego death. And these are strategies I saw myself using and that I did research on. And I take a very multidisciplinary approach. Like if something is true, it's true in multiple places. So I'll provide the wisdom, the feminine, and the knowledge, the masculine, to say they're saying the same thing, right? So here, the wisdom and knowledge is appreciation. Appreciate your challenges in life because that's where you grow. And additionally, the knowledge appreciation is a heart opener. So it grounds you in your body, it decreases cortisol, it's the surrender, it recalibrates the nervous system and gets you ready to open up the wound to find the wisdom inside the wound. So, one wound I had is fear all men you know, that's logical in my life, right? But I didn't know it was there, and that was driving my anxiety. And I would like sweat in public and get hot all the time and be uncomfortable and run, and it was gnarly for me. Um, but when I found that wound with the first guy, who's Tim in the book, 6 months in, we got in a big fight, and that's the rupture. And then here was the repair. This is what women do is rupture and repair. And I had to learn how to kind of orchestrate that process between me and a masculine. And I didn't know how to do it previously. I didn't know how to forgive. I didn't know how to let stuff go. And so I held on to stuff, obviously, and I had a lot of stuff. So I know how to hold on to stuff. I'm good at that. So anyway, I turned fear all men into the wisdom, men protect me. Sure, there's some men to fear, but as long as I have a fear of men in my subconscious, we attract what we are so we can see ourselves. This is the way the universe is a mirror. So if I'm attracting in men who are, into BDSM, multiple women, chances are there could be some rape going on too. And that's why I'm attracting in these kind of men. Like my dad, he prioritize women. My mom was a beautiful woman and he was a salesman, a lot of money, traveled. Do you know what I'm saying?
Do you
It was-
think then it's hard for, let's look at a woman's perspective. Is it hard for women to come to terms with the fact that they need to appreciate themselves more to recalibrate and obtain that wisdom then?
I think that it's really hard for women to accept that, to have accountability, and here's why. It's legitimate. Because if we look at women biologically, we're the communicators, we're the vulnerable ones. When we feel scared, we're supposed to communicate so the men can make sure that everything is safe. I say at a basic level. Do you know what I'm saying? But when you pass down childhood trauma, and like me, I had a very anxious attachment to self, my perception on what is actually dangerous and what is not dangerous is out of balance. So then, I'm out of balance. So who do I attract to see myself? Men who are out of balance. So I attract men who can't listen because why? I can't communicate. So then we're perfect to like trigger our wounds and give us opportunities to grow, to go, oh, you want to listen? Okay, I got to communicate. How did Tim and I figure that out? 9 months in, I just start texting him. He doesn't text back, and I see him at yoga, and we don't talk at yoga, but we're both getting better. I'm like, okay, keep going. But I mean, I really had to take it back to basics. I think a lot of women really do have to take it back to basics because we're taught to be masculine women. We're not taught to be feminine. What career are you going to have? Where are you going to go to college? How much money are you going to make? Not how am I going to be a healthy, feminine woman who knows how to create a home? No idea. Right? So it's hard. Yeah.
Why do you then think men and women find value in things that are maybe causing them to be happy in the short term, but unhappy in the long term?
Well, we've traded wealth and convenience for health, in terms of health and happiness, and health and well-being. So we prioritize wealth and convenience over well-being and health. And so when we prioritize, things that, are we call it ego, but are kind of surface level, convenient, oh, quick, 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 quick. Oh, I can do more because everything's quick. What we're finding out is that we're just running our nervous systems into the ground because we have no time to restore ourselves. Like now in multiple countries, doctors are prescribing nature time instead of, the SSRIs and the other, mental illness medications because that's what people need. They need to relax their nervous system, be grateful to the trees and the birds, and commune with nature some, walk barefoot if they can, and then, oh, that grounds us, and I think that especially in the cities, we're just not connected to how we are natural human beings and we need to be in balance with nature. So we've really lost ourselves and just thought that, we're above it, we're just above that and we're just above that. But that's the wound. That's not the wisdom.
Like the couple who are out of balance because the woman is spending a lot of time in her masculine energy, work, work, work,
Yeah.
work, work. The man spending a lot of time in his feminine energy, running around and trying to figure things
Emotional.
out. And is very emotional, probably on the sofa in his underwear eating Cheetos like his name is Peggy Bundy, right?
Yeah.
How can then two people come together and make a
Mhm.
conscious decision that their value now is a part of their relationship, which is ultimately going to trickle down to themselves?
That's a great question. And so this is the thing, it starts with the women. It used to be the woman had to drop the handkerchief and then the man could decide what to do, right? But that's still the thing. The woman's the center, the woman's the 5D, the spiritual, the emotional. Our nervous systems are far more robust than men's nervous systems. That's why the male infant mortality rate is so high. So we're designed to kind of channel that source energy, and men are designed to be once removed, detached from it, plan, strategize, work, do the kind of non-emotional things, the physical labor, right? um and so women have to take responsibility for occupying the center of a relationship. And when women are in their masculine, they want men to entertain them because that's what women's emotions are doing. I mean, one woman's emotions is enough entertainment for any relationship if men embrace it. But this is what I found with all of these men, these like, players that I attracted into my life because I had a wound that I'm replaceable, which obviously I'm not, but that was how my soul showed me my subconscious. They don't know how to listen. And so they don't value women's voices. And so what do? You start an argument. Oh, you get a soft next for 3 or 4 days. I'm not talking to you for 3 or 4 days. You do it again, you're out. It's like, and then where do they go for their emotional support? These narcissistic men, because this is who I deal with, they go to other men. So they're in their feminine, going to other men in their feminine, giving each other emotional support and calling it healthy masculinity because they have a lot of money because men do what they're successful at. So if you're successful at fighting like Andrew Tate is, then he fights and he's four-time UFC world champion billionaire. But he's not successful at a monogamous relationship where he has to go deep. See, when men are injured from a maternal wound, they go for breadth because they can't do the depth because their wounds prevent that. And until they find the right woman to help them go through that depth, they're just stuck in the breath because they're once removed from their center. So this is the hard part. So if you're in a relationship where the woman's in the masculine and the man is the feminine, then yes, the woman's got to, admit that she has to learn how to occupy the center of a relationship, do the emotional intimacy. But is it likely that that is the healthy relationship they're going to end up in? Probably not. Probably not. Because, there were 6 men in me, like for the 7 chakras, right? So that's what was interesting. I had Tim, Justin Waller, who's Andrew's best friend, Andrew Tate, who, can't stop talking, is my throat chakra, number 3, right? Interesting. And then the next 2 are Fire Academy instructors, like, the strength there. And the last one is my guy from my childhood. And they're all really similar, like really similar. Like the guy from the childhood, he's former assistant special agent in charge of the FBI. I had 2 fire academy instructors. I had a construction guy. I got a finance guy. He's also Jewish who speaks Hebrew. My first guy, Tim, just like my ex-husband. So, we attract what we are. The universe is a mirror so that we can see ourselves. So one piece of advice I'm going to give to women and to men, which can really help stop the arguing between you is that the universe is a mirror to show ourselves in every moment as a self-reflection tool, as a self-growth tool. So when someone recognizes selfishness, sees selfishness outside of themselves, that is their soul showing them the selfishness inside of themselves. And now it's time to self-reflect. So, like The View, okay, perfect example. They are talking about their own perspective all day long, saying that they're actually, seeing into other people. This is the problem with psychology. And I'll quote Carl Jung here, who's all throughout my book. Gotta love me some Carl Jung. My maiden name is Swiss German. He's Swiss German, and his whole family was psychics. So I'm like, okay, yay. He realized that talking and therapy didn't get him anywhere. He had people just look in a mirror for 10 minutes, write down what they saw, which was usually a lot of negative, and then they talk about that. Like, I had an interview with a psychologist. He couldn't get through 10 minutes talking to me without cutting me off repeatedly, telling me I didn't know what I was talking about, and then trying to psychoanalyze me when I asked him how he uses universe as a mirror inside of his therapy model. So I knew I was going for the trigger, but I had to go for the gusto, and then we had all these email exchanges, and I had to finally set rules for how he would converse with me. And I asked him, why would I want to see a psychologist who's incapable of listening to me, not psychoanalyzing me, not projecting his problems onto me? What? But that's what's going on in therapy. And I've been in a lot of therapy. I can tell, it's not like I'm just thinking this. I had one therapist tell me, well, I have 45 years of experience. All police officers I've ever met don't know mental illness. I'm like, you, you want to, you want to try to argue that because I've talked to a police officer who told me I'm not mentally ill after my first enlightenment experience, that he's definitely mentally ill because of your subjective experience. And then don't forget the universe is a mirror. And now my ex-husband's paying her to help my daughters. Okay, I'm stepping out. My kids are adults, I'm stepping out. But that's the level of crazy that we're dealing with. Think you go to a psychologist or a therapist, they know what they're talking about? They freaking don't. I mean, sure, some do. I've found some great ones, a few. There's a few great, but I found that 80%, and that's a huge part of the problem is that they think they're seeing, but they're really projecting because they don't understand how it
I
works.
learned a lot about myself looking in the mirror. This is probably in my 20s where I had a very serious conversation. And the reason why I say that is I came to terms with things I didn't like about myself, but more importantly, and I think this is a part that's missed, is that I came to terms with things that I love about
Yeah.
myself. We don't build each other up enough. You mentioned accountability. I
Mm,
took accountability of everything that I was doing right and everything that I was doing wrong. And I had to understand it why, right?
yeah.
When why do you then think some people are unable to either acknowledge or accept the accountability and responsibility for some of their actions in their life?
I have a great example. It's because of the wounds in their subconscious. And here's what happened. So, my youngest daughter and I got in an argument, and I was wrong, and I needed to apologize. And I was having a very difficult time apologizing. I was never taught as a child. I had no model of how to forgive, how to apologize, how to be accountable. Just shame and guilt was my mom. So, um, I asked my subconscious, I'm like, why can't I apologize right now? And this is what I heard. And I was like, you think that if you apologize, she'll leave. I'm like, okay, here's wisdom. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. My capacity to apologize should make her want to stay. I was like, oh. So once I moved from a wound to a wisdom, then I called her up and I was able to apologize, heartfelt apology. I'm sorry. I did whatever I did wrong. I don't remember. But it's because I had a wound in my subconscious. So when people are incapable, adults, teenagers, adults are incapable of what we think a healthy human being could be, like an apology or take accountability on something really serious. Like you deck someone when, they weren't yelling at you. It's probably your fault, but a lot of people can't take accountability and it's not taught. Like I was watching this interview between Konstantin Kisin, and I just love him, and someone who is part of the British parliament. I don't know his exact position, but he's in charge of hate speech. And his definition of hate speech is if the other person feels bad about it, then the person who said it could be arrested. I was like, I could tell 10 people they're stupid and get 10 different reactions, all based on their emotional capacity, emotional maturity. So how is that a legal way of handling things? But that's why they're locking people up in England for saying that, a trans man is not a man because they're a biological woman. And people are getting arrested for saying that publicly, even though you have tons of science that proves that. But this is where our ideologies get us into trouble when we don't want to, I don't want to hurt. I don't want people, we are here to take on wounds so we can find wisdom. Like one thing I really had to accept is if I want Mount Everest size wisdom, I gotta take on Mount Everest sized wounds and move through those hills and valleys in life. Now I can move through really high highs and really deep lows now because I've expanded my emotional range to include enlightenment, which I didn't know was an emotion until I did the research over the last year and a half. And I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies. But what were my professors concerned with? They were concerned with Foucault. Foucault is like the godfather of queer theory, of like feminism, of postmodernism, of minor attracted people, like, you know, so they wanted me to analyze religion through that lens. And I just was like, I'm so glad I left and didn't go on and get my PhD. But that's where universities are at. So lots of sexual promiscuity, not a lot of books getting written, sitting around talking about ideas and theories. And so I went and had kids and figured out wisdom on my own. Yeah.
So when someone is looking to maybe understand their place in the world, despite the confusion,
Mm.
despite the ability to maybe not present themselves in a way to offend, because let's be honest, right? A lot of us, we grew up with conditional love, and part of that conditional love was you perform A plus, you get attention. You do well in sports, you get validation. You weren't really in a position to offend because to offend means that you're able to speak your mind. Because when you speak your
Right,
mind, you run the risk of offending. So for
right.
the men and women out there who's trying to maybe understand their place in the world after the trauma, how can they identify the type of person that they're attracting, the narcissist, the abuser, and realize what it means to the type of person that they are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I would say, with the self-love strategies, the universe is a mirror strategy. And all of those will teach you how to transform your wounds into wisdom. And this is where you trust the process. Like, I would five guys, I had to go through five guys before I got back to my sixth guy back in my childhood. And just to acknowledge, to trust the process, like the fact that we're all so messed up at this point, I think that many of us will probably need multiple relationships that will get in and stay in for a while and grow and learn and then eventually break and then get into more and learn and break just to get back to the point where we can attract in something healthy. Because see, I was attracting in people that were unhealthy because I was unhealthy. So the more I admitted how unhealthy I was, the faster I changed. So I would say for people out there, like especially women, you see a lot of women are saying, well, are all men narcissists? Where are all the good men? Okay, girlfriend, it's your subconscious that's the problem here. Your subconscious, your wounds that you haven't processed yet, are attracting in men to trigger those wounds to help you. Because a lot of people think, oh, well, you trigger me, you're the problem. No, 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 no. Triggers are our healing friend and not our healing foe. Like I trigger everybody. And why do I trigger everybody? Because I vibrate super high because I'm in and out of enlightenment all the time. And so when people come into my energy field, that trigger is bringing the emotional pain to the surface so they can release it and become more in alignment with high vibrating energy. So the trigger is the first step towards the wound to wisdom process. So appreciate the triggers. Say, be grateful for the triggers. Your boyfriend triggers you, go, "Oh, okay, I got something to do now." You berate him, then he's not safe to have to communicate with you, and then he's going to leave. So you want to keep a man around, acknowledge you have triggers. And anyone who gets triggered, they all of a sudden they yell or they hit or they, do things, triggered things. That means you got wounds. And that's not that person's fault that you have those wounds. You have those wounds, that's your soul giving you an opportunity to expand your consciousness, to expand your emotional range, to pull more wisdom or more knowledge out of yourself. Like every soul is the same. The wisdom that I have is in every single soul. I'm not like, special soul over here. We're all made the same. It's just through the lifetimes, I'm an older soul, so I have more wisdom and knowledge in my soul, but you know, it, there's no difference here. I say I'm a shaman, that means I talk to souls. All of our souls are constantly talking. Like, how many dog videos do you see where the dog gets super excited 1 minute before the owner gets home every single time? Well, physicists have proven that we have energy bodies, souls, and our souls are all communicating through our hearts, right? In case the dog is all happy in his heart, and so he's vocalizing, right? So this is normal for souls, but when we're humans and we don't acknowledge that we're souls having a human experience and that our soul is in charge, then we don't know how to, like, I didn't know how to fix my problems. I almost died when I was 30 and I didn't know how to be grateful to God because I lived. Like how am I didn't know how to be grateful. I mean, I'm 30 years old with two kids and a husband, and I don't know how to be grateful. Like that's really messed up. Really messed up. Yeah.
What would you then think are some of the obstacles that people face in understanding that they're worthy and that they're
Mm.
grateful?
Obstacles they'll face. I say the biggest obstacle I face is just always knowing that the challenge is within me. Any problem I'm experiencing outside of myself is my soul showing me a problem inside of myself. Like, let's use Andrew Tate as an example. Okay. So I came into Justin's life and in his best friend, Justin Waller, in June of 2022. In August of 2022, Andrew got canceled on social media and had his payment processing center disconnected. And then a couple months later, he was thrown in solitary confinement. So when he was in solitary confinement, I talked to his soul a lot. It was kind of like, I came to Justin's life and I helped Andrew and I helped Justin, and neither of them hired me, and so they weren't healed. So this is our souls kind of like turning up the volume. Like they didn't listen to the message. If a shaman of my caliber shows up in your life, then maybe you should talk to her and like pay her and like appreciate her, because I've never been paid by any of these men. So in solitary confinement during one of our first conversations, I'm like, okay, Andrew, and I'm in my garage, in my recliner, in the dark, like I'm isolated too. Like I said, I've been isolated most of my life. The solitary confinement is super isolating. So I resonated with that experience. I understand why I attracted that into my life. I was that isolated. So I'm like, okay, so you know that your external reality is a reflection of your internal reality and how you feel about yourself, right? He says, yeah. I'm like, so from that perspective, why are you in solitary confinement? And so that just corralled him in his own soul, in his own pain that he couldn't project onto anybody else. Because I saw him after, this is what was the real catalyst. About 2 weeks after it got canceled, I saw him in a video and he was whining. Oh, well, the kids on TikTok did it. I'm like, okay, victim, stop. And Justin was upset. And so then after I helped him, the next interview, like a day or two later, I saw him. He's like, oh yeah, I created that problem. I created that problem. This is my fault and I'm fixing it. And he was like, on a mission, like, I created this problem. I'm solving this problem. I had corralled him in his own problems enough for him to take his next step. But, he was a little arrogant and didn't think he needed more help. And so that's where the solitary confinement came in. And so, like I said, my guy from my childhood, his initials are JC, you know, former special agent in charge of the FBI, is currently the head of global security at GoDaddy. He got that job in May of 2022. And I reached, my intuition said, text Justin Waller in the next month in June of 2022. Because I always felt like I was working in lockstep with someone, right? Like I have these huge shamanic gifts and I'm helping, and Andrew Tate's in my life. And I'm like, well, who am I? And what is this, right? And so in last fall, a year ago, I finally reached out to JC, and then I saw that he worked at GoDaddy and I saw all the history there. I was like, oh, okay. Our souls are communicating, right? When Andrew wasn't, didn't fix himself. Okay, well, we all turned up the volume on Andrew collectively as a soul. Oh, that soul needs to be corralled. And so we corralled him. Yeah.
The men that you mentioned that are coming in and out of your life, either in a romantic sense or a friendship sense, right? You shared that you identified that they weren't the best type of men for you because they were reflecting on things that maybe you felt that you were lacking. For
Well,
right?
not exactly. I would say I needed them in my life to show me my wounds. Okay, so that I could turn my wounds into wisdom. To like if I'm flirting with a guy at yoga, if he's not asking me out, maybe I got a problem, you know? So, because men, it's a good to go, you're good to go. And he really liked me, couldn't stop staring at me, but he wasn't asking me out, right? And neither were the other men. And really, I wasn't giving them an opportunity. I wasn't ready to be asked out. And so the whole point was for me to accept that I attracted these men into my life, it was hard to accept this, that um, they came into my life for me to see my wounds and turn them into wisdom, and for them to see their wounds and turn them into wisdom. Like, what an honor it was that my soul was selected to help 2 fire academy instructors in Southern California. Like the second one, he oversees the Wildland Cadet Program, wildfires in California. He's taken that on, and they had multiple women. But that was my chance to really see myself and like bring out my shamanic gifts. I remember when I first met Tim, like 2 months later, I asked him, like, what's the name of your company? And it immediately landed in my head. Now, I didn't know previously that what I heard in my head, everybody wasn't hearing. And I said the name. He's like, because we never discussed it. I was like, oh, maybe that's just me. A year and a half later, I'm helping the most Googled man on the planet with my shamanic gifts that I barely knew I had a year and a half earlier. But that is kind of the model when we accept that, okay, I'm wounded. I have wounds. This is not this man's fault that I'm not getting asked out. This is my problem that I got to fix. It's feedback for me, excellent feedback. The man staring at me, flirting on me, flaunting that he has money, and not asking me out, that's probably an issue. And so I
So let
had
me
to.
ask you then, if we are attracting what we need to show us our wounds, how can we attract those that are going to show us happiness and peace?
Well, that's the thing. You always attract based on our wounds. Our souls plan based on the wound. This is also based on laws of physics. Like this one physics experiment helped me accept why my life has been so challenging. I'm like, thank you, physics, right? So I call it's the two ball experiment. So you have two balls, they're identical, and one track is slightly downhill, and one track has hills and valleys. And so the distance is the same, but with the hills and valleys, the distance traveled is technically longer. Which ball reaches the finish line first?
Are you asking me? You're going to tell me. Tell,
Yes.
tell our
Yeah.
audience which
I'm
one
going to
finishes
tell you,
first.
which one do you think? The hills and valleys or the slightly downhill?
I want to say hills and valleys.
Yes. Yes. Because when the ball goes downhill into the wound, right, you pick up the propulsion and momentum inertia necessary to go back up. Like if you want to climb Mount Everest, if you want to go that high, then you're going to have to go equally deep in terms of preparation. So you go deep in the preparation and then you come out with the wisdom. You illuminate the wisdom, right? And it's the same thing with how our souls plan our lives. So this is how you get your energy to fluctuate, which is a live energy. When you're stuck in the valley of darkness, which I thought, I'm like, is my whole life going to be a valley of darkness with the lower back pain? No, I had to learn how to get myself out of the valley of darkness, which my self-love strategies will. And we'll put that link below for you guys. Um, then you kind of learn to surf. Like, and I said earlier, I kind of went in a little and out, and now I'm like doo 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 because I know how to surf the waves of life. I know how to go into a wound quickly and go back up to enlightenment, illuminate it, and then go back in. So what is a happy relationship, and they have a lot of science on this, isn't that you're attracting someone that makes you happy. You're attracting someone you can go through this rupture and repair process with successfully. A man who can stay present and listen to his woman's, vocalizing as long as she needs. A woman who's not berating her man and makes it safe for him to come to her with his emotional needs. So, your capacity to go through the hills and valleys in life is what makes a successful relationship. And there will be happiness and there will not be. But here's the thing we also need to understand is that women experience a lot less happiness than men. We have half as much serotonin. We are designed to go into the shadow, into the deeper, denser, darker emotions and bring us out. Like that is our job. That's right brain self reflection work. Right brain's feminine, left brain's masculine. So, this whole, happy wife, happy life thing, I get it, but it doesn't really encapsulate real, true, healthy, long lasting relationship and what it really looks like. I remember one guy I saw an interview, he's like, I pick my wife because she triggers me and that's how I grow. I'm like, that's a smart man. That woman connects to you very deeply. Like the more deeply you connect to someone, the more you can trigger them and help them get it out. Like was I happy going to yoga, coming home and talking to their souls? There was happiness, there was laughter, but there was a lot of crying. A lot of crying, a lot of releasing, a lot of sitting in the garage and not that clean and, some rats in the walls sometimes. Again, I'm not kidding. I had rats in my walls while I'm, talking to fire academy instructors. But what are they doing? The first one, he's a decorated like firefighter of the year, fire engineer, and he just pulls double duty teaching urban search and rescue, which is really two jobs. And then he has multiple women because that's, dealing with the addiction, which is rampant in the fire department. And then he goes out there, he's good enough to get decorated. Like, imagine if that man didn't have an unhealthy childhood. He could have 10 kids and he's like 6'4", looks like Superman, gorgeous man, smart, educated, accomplished if he didn't have it, but this is what how our souls plan it. And I'm going to quote Winston Churchill. He said, "It is often said that famous men are the product of an unhappy childhood, and there's the wound." So if you start with a deep wound, then your soul has planned an equal amount of wisdom, right? If you have little wounds, you get little wisdom or knowledge. If you have big wounds, like look at Stephen Hawking's, how much knowledge and wisdom and how big of a wound did that man take on? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, Stephen
How the hell,
Hawkins
yeah.
is a success story, and there's a lot of people that have overcome things, and I think that's the beautiful thing about life is you have examples of people overcoming something that may be as difficult as what you're going through, or even more so, and of course less difficult
Yeah.
as well. When it comes to that journey, Carrie, then are most people able to complete or at least start that journey?
Well, everyone's on that journey. Our souls are, we're here to expand. So during the second really big enlightenment experience I had, I was shown how souls split into masculine and feminine souls. So originally we were one soul that kind of encompassed both feminine and masculine qualities, and then we started expanding. Okay, well to continue expanding, we had to expand into two souls. Well, how did that happen? Okay, and this kind of shows the kind of when something's true, it's true in multiple places, right? Like I said earlier. So this is like proof of that. So I was shown that the intent to create the masculine soul creates the feminine soul. And then the feminine soul tears out half of her heart chakra and creates the masculine soul. I'm like, oh, okay, right. So the woman is, the source energy, and the men are once removed. Like I talked about, I was like, oh, that's fascinating. And it really helped me kind of align with laws of physics. Like, well, if I'm the center and he's like the orbiter, how can an orbiter go around more than one center? Red pill, right? Myron Gaines, like, oh, I got him good. The day that he was demonetized, I found that out 2 hours after I downloaded Wisdom, that monogamy is the path to enlightenment. And then I went out to All Souls, right? And so that pushed his show out of alignment, and now monogamy is becoming more in alignment than all this, hedonistic, which we know from history, once hedonism takes in, it destroys society because you destroy the nuclear family. And once you destroy the nuclear family, you're done, like we are now. Well, not we're done, but it gets, we're cutting off children's genitals because they think they're the opposite gender at 7 years old. I mean, it's not that young, but at even 14, they're children. Yeah, I could.
So let me ask you one final question before I let you go, Carrie. I want to give you three wishes when it comes to this Aladdin's genie lamp, okay?
Okay, okay.
What are three things you wish men and women knew about feminine energy and why?
That feminine energy creates, masculine energy executes, like, orchestrates, and then it needs to kill. And that we are the creative center. So we're the center of relationships. So going off to be an orbiter isn't where women have their value. When women return to the center and be that beautiful emotional center connected to spirituality, the 5D, then there's where our value comes out, our ability to help people work through their emotional wounds and teach them how to forgive themselves and nurture themselves and be compassionate with themselves and others. And that's where women will really come to life. And what I had to learn is that femininity fuels masculinity because women drop the handkerchief first. So when women stopped dropping the handkerchief, the chivalry, went away. So if we want the chivalry and all the great men to come back, women, then we got to be feminine.